All right, we live.
Good.
Yep. You want to kick it out my way, or I can get it.
Yeah, you kick it out, bro.
All right, Shalom.
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 First thing and foremost, we want to give all praise, glory, and honor that's due to
To
Yahweh,
Yahweh,
Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakak, Wadash.
Yahweh.
Want to give double honors and give double honors to the elders and apostles at Great Millstone who rule well. Peace and blessing to the 144,000 and the hopeful elect. Shalom Barakathum. We're the brothers from the Kansas City camp. All right, doing another live lesson and a sit down. And today we want to discuss well the basis of it will be an article that we'll go through. But we want to discuss the parallels of the events that happened in the Persian captivity with Amen or Haman the Agagite, where we see the devil basically up to his same old tricks again today. But we'll go through the article and get some understanding on the history, and this will help brothers really understand the lineage of Esau Edom. You know how crafty this devil is, and how he changes names and he supplants kingdoms and rulerships, and he does that to this very day. You know,
Con.
so
Con.
brothers got the article. Whoever has it, you can we can start reading it, or I can read it.
Yeah, I got it pulled up. But hold on, give me 1 second, bro. Let me get my light get it real quick.
Yeah, and this article really backs the point up. Esau, where it say he shall, or where in Genesis where it say Cain, he shall be a fugitive and a vagabond in the earth. This
Mm-hmm.
article really highlights how this man changes his identities and adapts to certain cultures, so he himself don't have to be figured out. He will absorb your culture and then take it over and say, you know what, I'm going to be these people now. The same thing he did with us.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. Con. I got a quick precept. It's the book of
Yep.
Psalms 49, and I'm start 11. It says, the inward thought is that the house is still complete forever.
It's like,
It says, in their dwelling places to all generations, and they call their lands after their own name, right? Because,
Mm-hmm.
like, going into the concept of a fugitive is a person that hide among, they hide out, they use disguises. Like I
Yep.
mentioned earlier in the listen I did about a fugitive, that movie with Harrison Ford. He was basically on the run from the authorities because they was looking for him for a crime he didn't commit. But in retrospect, Esau did commit these crimes, man. So on the time, instead of him going by the Edomite, because it's quite obvious that the line of Cain was traced through the lineage of Esau through Amalek, and people were well known of bloodlines then. So it made sense that he hid himself among other nations, man, and called
Mm-hmm.
himself the Greeks, the Romans. He called himself the Jews. He called himself, you know, Americans, British, French, all these surnames, so to speak. But overall, he's just really an Edomite. He's the devil, you
Mm-hmm.
know.
Right. Yeah, that's why you see that in Genesis 4. You know, the Lord had to put the mark on Cain. You know, because he'll slip out. You got to know who this devil is at all times. You know.
Con, con. Where it says from Haman to Alexander, from the Agonite connection to Mystery Babylon. And it's the same story playing out all over again, man. You
Mm-hmm.
know. And it says, but the story of oppression and domination woven throughout history finds its origins in the bitter enmity between Jacob and Esau, because this whole movie is based on Jacob and Esau, man. Like the apostles always made the allusion of, or the mental note of having a plate of food and you got the two main dishes and then you got side dishes. Jacob and Esau represents the main dishes. But it says this ancient conflict recorded in scripture is not a mere tale of sibling rivalry, but a prophetic saga of systematic control and spiritual warfare, man. And that's the spirit, because this is a war. This is a spiritual war, man. And when you're at war, you're trying to subdue the enemy, right? All right.
Mm-hmm.
And we're their enemy and they're our enemies. And ultimately, they're enemies of Yahweh Bashim and Yahweh Shai. But it says here, uh, it says, at the heart of this story lies the lineage of Haman the Agagite, a descendant of Esau's line through Amalek, as we know that Amalek was the grandson of Esau. And it says, and that's the top tribe in Edom, and its enduring influence of the rise of Alexander the Great, Hellenistic Greece, and ultimately the Roman Empire, which right now we're in the modern day Roman Empire. Okay, because America has taken on the customs of ancient Egypt, Greece, the Greco-Roman customs, ancient Assyria, Babylon, and these are this one big petri dish of wickedness wrapped up in one wicked kingdom. But it says, by examining these conditions or connections, we uncover the startling truth. Haman, Alexander, and their respective empires represent stages in the development of Mystery Babylon, which is America, described in Revelation as the ultimate system of spiritual and physical oppression.
Yep.
And somebody get the book Micah 2, and somebody start at 2 and 2, and let's read that. Start at 1, matter of fact.
This is Micah chapter 2, verse 1. Woe to them that devise iniquity and work evil upon their beds.
Mm-hmm.
When the morning is light, they practice it because it is in the power of their hand.
Right, it's in the power of their hand. And when you think of that scripture, what comes to mind?
Yeah, man. Small hats.
Yeah.
Yep.
Esau, Edom's rulership,
Mm-hmm. God, keep going.
Verse 2, it says, and they covet fields and take them by violence, and houses and take them away. So they oppress a man and his house, even a man and his heritage.
Right. So that goes back into the article we just read, the point we just made about how this is the system of spiritual and physical oppression. Because right now they got laws or they have certain mandates on the books that if you speak out against Amalek, then you're basically called an anti-S. So it's going to come a time that us calling ourselves the Hebrew Israelites will be a crime, punishable into death, man. And that's oppressing the man and his heritage. Because how in the hell can you tell somebody that they're not a particular people, but we've been proven time and time again that we're these people through prophetic connections, archaeological fact, and just through the spirit, man. We fit the bill of oppression.
Yeah, that's right.
You know? And it says here, keep locking on me. And it reads, it says, spiritual and physical oppression. How many Jakes are in prison? What's the percentage of so-called men of color in prison to this day? If any brother know.
Man, it's close to 20%, I believe.
20%. You know?
Either in there right now or has been in there at some point.
At some point.
Like there's more people locked up here than there are in China. And China has 5 times the population of America.
They say quick Google say black individuals make up approximately 32% of federal prison population, even though they represent 13% of U.S. population. It says similarly, Hispanic individuals who account for 16% of U.S. population made up for 23% of prison population. So that's over 50%.
Yep.
Yeah, those are the ones that are in prison. Not the percentage of Jakes, but it's basically Southern and Northern Kingdom in there.
Yeah, that easily can be 60 to 70% if you include Gad. Now, ask yourself this: they say that Edomite males commit between 35 to 49% of the crimes, and so-called blacks commit 25 to 29% of the crime. So, just among the tribe of Judah, Benjamin, and Levi, if we make up 25% of the crime rate that goes on, which is probably a lower number than that, but Jake is wicked. How the hell do you get a 31 or 33% incarceration rate for a particular group of people when they don't even commit the offenses of that nature?
It's unjust.
It's unjust, man. That's an unjust balance. That's an unjust weight, man. That's oppression right there. And this system was built on the oppression of our people, bro. Look at what happened to what's his name, Ryan Hinton. Ryan, what's his last name?
Yeah, Junior.
Hinton, Jr.
Hinton,
yeah. Shot the Jake in the back from running away from him.
Yeah, because they police their neighborhoods differently. It'll be the same laws on the books in our neighborhood and their neighborhood, but the patrols move different. The stop and frisk policies are different. And before you know it, they're locking you up more than anybody else at a different rate.
Yes, sir. You got it out.
Isaiah 42:22, it says, but this is a people robbed and spoiled. They are all of them snared in holes, and they are hid in prison houses. They are for prey, and none delivered, for spoil, and none said restored.
Yep.
I was just going back to that point.
Yep.
That's it. And Esau makes a lot of money. It came out McDonald's, they make a lot of profits off of prison labor. You think slavery done gone away with it, they in there making license plates, they in there making bending paper clips with their hands. You know, all of the little shit you think don't cost a lot of money. How you think they getting it for that cheap? They can sell you this for $1 or that because they paying Jake 5 cents an hour in there, man. You know.
Oh
Mm-hmm.
yeah, prison. That's basically what's the 14th Amendment?
Yep. Yep. They basically legalize slavery, but only if you commit a crime.
Form of punishment.
You
Yeah.
know. But this nigga decide what the crimes are. You know. Here it is. This nigga locking you up for selling crack, and he used the FDA to just rubber stamp everything, man. Opioids, red dye number 40. You know, and but it's
Mm-hmm.
legal for him. You see.
Yeah.
But that
Precept.
this is the system we live in. Go ahead, brother.
This is Zechariah 11:5 says, "Whose possessors slay them and hold themselves not guilty, and they that sell them say, Blessed be Yahweh, for I am rich, and their own
Mm-hmm.
shepherds pity them not." You know,
Yep.
so they get away with shit like that. They slay us, but they say, "Hey, not guilty." You know, they basically get off with extremely light sentences for anything. Even that dude Jeffrey Dahmer, when he got arrested, you know, how is it that he had to go to trial so long and go through all these loopholes and was able to claim, you know, mental disorder, mental disturbances and shit like that? Every time he commits murder or something like that, or something mentally wrong with him, he's mentally
Yep.
ill.
Mm-hmm.
Get off, you
That's
know.
right.
And then they look at us and say, "Look at these niggas, you know, they just violent. They're
Yeah.
always in the hood. They're always this and that, you know." So they say, "Oh, I'm rich." It's these
Right.
black people
Right.
that they're the problem, you know. So
Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
get caught the wrong time of day walking in a quote unquote white neighborhood. They after you, man.
Yeah. And then if I may add real quick, you know, because tying it back into the article, you know, dealing with Haman or Haman, you know, that's why we dealing with that all over again, because he had the whole plot to exterminate the Jews. You know,
Sir.
that's the same shit we dealing with now. You know, locked in the
Yeah.
prison. You know,
And he did it with subtlety, man. You know, that's why this article is so powerful because it comes back, man. And who's training these police force, man? Amalekites. You know, go look up who the police get their training from. You
Mm-hmm.
know, it's gonna go straight back to those guys. You know.
Yep. Yep, like that, yep, and like that CD, what is it called? CQC, close quarter combat. They learned that from God. But also they got something which is called Krav Maga, which is a Israeli martial arts that they're training them in. But really Jake invented Krav Maga too. But the Israelis, they incorporated it into their military training now. So like
Mm-hmm.
a lot of these cops and shit they're training in, bro. It's spirit you say that because like the coach who I train with at the gym, he's an Irish dude. He's definitely a Jake, but he's a retired firefighter. And he was like he be training the police department and the fire department, so he have them sparring against one another. So sometimes if I go like on an early day, you have like firefighter Edomite dudes in there, you know, learning how to fight and shit. Why you think they're learning? Because they ready to go head up with Jake, man. Because it's
Yeah.
coming to ultimate clash.
Yep. That's
You know?
right. Real quick.
But it's go ahead, bro. Yeah, I was gonna go a little bit in on this article, a little bit.
Oh,
Yeah, that way.
This,
This shit deep, bro. So it says the Amalekite lineage, biblical foundations, and this is why I've always speculated that Alexander was probably of the tribe of Amalek, because for one thing, he had direct dealings with the temple, you know, with the priests in the temple. He dealt with them, you know what I'm saying? He gave his false blessings and all that other shit. And even going back down to the line of Herodians, I believe that the Macedonians and Herodians are about that same stock, man. You know?
Yeah.
But it says the scripture introduced Amalek as one of Israel's perpetual enemies, descending from Esau through his concubine Timnah, which is Genesis 36:12, right? And fuck man. Yep. And it says here, this enemy manifests most clearly in the actions of Agag, king of the Amalekites, who symbolizes Esau's defiance against the Most High of Israel. Now, what Saul fucked up at, and this is why he lost the kingdom to David, he didn't smite him like the Most High commanded him to do it, man. See, if he would have put an end to him, we wouldn't be in this predicament now. But ultimately, it was for prophecy's sake. It had to play out because the Lord had to reserve a certain amount of Edomites so he could fulfill prophecy, bro. Because this story was already written before it was already put in on paper, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? This is nothing more but a director's cut of the Most High's movie. The script have already been written out that these characters or whoever we were and who we are today, we're going to play out in this story to do exactly what we were written in the script to do. So even though Saul didn't, he spared Agag. At the end of the day, it was written for him to do it because we had to understand this oppression. We had to go through this.
Yeah,
Yep.
and you notice Esau uses that theme in the movies. You know, you have that character that got away. You know, that got away from from oppression, and he came back and got
Yeah.
got revenge. On the
Mm-hmm.
ones that was oppressing him. Even though Esau tried to make himself seem like a good guy, but they
Yo,
use that in the movies, man.
Yeah,
God.
like some Bond villains.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah,
yep,
yeah.
It's
yep,
always something fucked up that happened to them, and they come back
yeah.
with
And
pure
he came
demon.
back with a vengeance. Yep.
The
Hmm.
demon.
You know.
Like that nigga Doctor No, and them fucking had no eye and shit.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and
Hmm.
Blowfield. But it says here, when King Saul captured Agag but disobeyed Yahweh by sparing him, which is 1 Samuel 15 and 8, it says he unwittingly allowed Amalekite influence to persist, setting the stage for future oppression, which was through the spirit. It says
Mm-hmm.
Haman introduced in the book of Esther is identified as an Agagite, linking him directly to the Amalekite lineage, man, which is your Judah day. It says his genocidal plot against the Jews. If somebody want to get Esther 3 and 6, we can go into it a little bit. Echoes the ancient feud between Jacob and Esau, because this feud goes way back, even before the time of Jacob and Esau.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, this goes back to Cain and Abel, man, because we understand that those are the same spirits coming back into the reincarnation or regeneration today. So
Mm-hmm.
Cain and Abel was basically equivalent to Jacob and Esau.
Yep. Recall hold Esther 3 and 1, and then additions to Esther chapter 3 as well. And it'll go into it.
Yep.
But now you see why the Lord reacted the way he did and took the kingdom from Saul. As you may think like, oh, King David did worse, you know, this and that, but it was what he did was really, really egregious through the spirit because he let an actual demon escape,
Yep.
Hmm.
that came back to oppress us, and that's the consequences of being rebellious, you know.
Yeah, that's
Yep.
why the Most High called him a deceitful and bloody man too, because indirectly Saul is responsible for the death of 100 millions of Israelites to this day.
Yeah,
Because
right.
we're still under these people's hands, man. We're under Amalek, man. Under
Yep.
these particular vassal states and shit.
Hmm.
This this is a horrible captivity, brothers, man. And the fact that we got to make the best out of it shows you how fucked up it is, man.
Right, right.
But yeah, somebody get that precept in Esther 3 and 6, and we'll get a little meat off that bone.
Yeah, Khan, you want me to start from the
Start at
top?
one. Start at one. Yep.
Yeah, it's Esther 3 and 1. It says, after these things, did King Ahasuerus promote Haman, the son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, and advanced him and set his seat above all the princes that were with him.
See,
And
so right there, King Ahasuerus. That's when you look him up. That's the Persian
Persian king.
uh King Xerxes.
Hmm.
Okay, now notice this nigga is already weaseled his way up into the courts of the Persian Empire, man. He's getting promoted to prince. Now, when you look at how this guy moves today, where is he, man? Go look at your average U.S. senator and see where they get paid by.
Mhm.
Okay, go look at some of these banks and who is funding these things, man. See, this guy has really never changed his mo. You know, and and
Hmm.
and that's why when the scriptures say two nations are in the womb of Rebecca, that was a prophecy that this was going to have two main characters of this story, man. Jacob and Esau, but specifically Amalek, which would be the first of the nations. That's why the scriptures track this guy so hard, man. You know, that's
Yeah.
why what Saul did was so egregious because he's the chief villain. you know?
Yeah. Yeah. That's why if you look at the Congress and the Senate, half of them are Amalekites, bro. You can look up how many people are in the Congress or the Senate that sit in the Senate seat. Most of them are Amalekites, bro. You know what I'm
Yep.
saying? Like hell, a lot of these mayors of these cities, a lot of them are Amalekites, bro. Like that dude, what's the governor of Florida? What's that guy name? The governor of
Ron,
Florida?
DeSantis.
Right.
DeSantis. Yeah, a lot of them are crypto Jews, man. Fucking
Yep.
hey, Rahm Emanuel, he was a small hat.
Hmm.
Fucking shit. I
Gavin
won't be
Newsom.
surprised if Bush was probably a small hat, man. I wouldn't doubt it.
Yeah, I wouldn't doubt it either.
Yeah,
Shit.
yeah. Because
You know.
Bush and the Clintons, bro, they're considered an elite family, bro. They sit up there. They're like
Mm-hmm.
right
Hmm.
under the Rothschilds, man.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
Yep.
especially that demon ass H.W. Bush. That nigga definitely.
Herbert Walker.
That nigga
Yeah,
was
that
jumping
nigga.
out of fucking
That nigga
helicopters
the
and shit.
pure demon.
Yeah,
That nigga there. Go ahead.
yeah.
So.
He was slick as hell. He said that would be a new world order and we will succeed. He said that shit slick as hell. With a smile. Fucking NPC character, man.
Verse 2, it says, and all the king's servants that were in the king's gate bowed and reverenced Haman. For the king has so commanded concerning him, but Mordecai bowed not, nor did him reverence.
Mm,
It says, then the king's servants which were in the king's gate said unto Mordecai, why transgressest thou the king's commandment? Now it came to pass, when they spake daily unto him, and he hearkened not unto them, that they told Haman to see whether Mordecai's matters would stand, for he had told them that he was a Jew.
mm-hmm,
And when Haman saw that Mordecai bowed not, nor did him reverence, then was Haman full of wrath.
mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And it's gonna be like it is today when we don't bow to this image, bro.
Yeah.
That's why he's so pissed off, man, because ultimately Esau has had a bloodlust with subjugating Jake. Okay, when you bow to somebody, that ultimately represents you having dominion over them and you being blessed over them, man. So
Mm-hmm.
hey, if Mordecai would have bowed to him in Esau's mind, that's like, hey, shit, that's my birthright. You belong to me any fucking way, you know. That's the
Yeah.
mindset he got. He want that birthright back. And throughout these particular captivities, he's been trying to forge his blessing back, you know, from the Most High. But it was not given to him through the Spirit. It was already set up in the Spirit for us to receive that birthright because that's just how the story was written, you know. But he's
Mm-hmm.
going fucking scorch earth to try to get it back as far as even setting up the new world order. This is why we're living in such an important time to understand where we are in prophecy and to understand through the Spirit that this mark of the beast, this system is going to be required for you to bow down to that image by taking it and being intertwined with that shit in order to have a seat in the new world order, but it's going to be detriment against your salvation. So you got to get in the mindset of, look, I can't bow.
That's right.
Be thou faithful unto death, and I will give thee a crown of life because it's going to come down to bloodshed, brothers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Esau wants you to sell out your soul to the Most High. Remember in the Maccabees, he tried to get that elder to eat pork,
Yep.
and then when he refused to do it in front of people, he said, "Well, just eat it behind the table, and then okay, well, don't eat it, but just tell everybody you did." You
Mm-hmm.
know,
Hmm.
because he
Make it
wants
look
the
like
mind of Jake to be sold out to him. He wants you to bow, man, willingly. You
And
know,
he wants
not
to pollute that virgin.
forced.
He wants to defile that virgin, man. He want to defile the virgin. That's what he want to do. He want to put
Mm-hmm.
his unlawful rod inside the virgin, man. And the Lord like, nah, fuck that. You've already
Yeah.
been putting your hands on my woman. I'm not gonna let you poke her no fucking more. You nasty nigga.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
You read that again, huh?
Yeah. Verse Esther 3 and 5, it says, and when Haman saw that Mordecai bowed not, nor did him reverence, then was Haman full of wrath.
Mm-hmm.
Verse 6, it says, and he thought scorn to lay hands on Mordecai alone, for they had showed him the people of Mordecai. Wherefore Haman sought to destroy all the Jews that were throughout the whole kingdom of Ahasuerus, even the people of Mordecai.
Now notice something. Mordecai was cool with bowing or under the captivity of a Persian king, which is a heathen. But when it came to bowing down to Haman, he was like, nah, because there's an enmity between Jacob and Esau. You know,
hmm
he had a
hmm
there was a spirit in him that he couldn't do that. You know, he
hmm
knew who he was. You know, and
Because through
that's
the
why
spirit,
why he said this is a spiritual war that we're dealing with, man. You know, we're
yeah, and
not
they
so-called
hmm
blacks. They're not so-called you-ish. You know.
in the spiritual though, because if he would have bowed to him then he wouldn't have, he would have bowed in his time too. He would have took the chip, he would have took the mark. He wouldn't have been a
Yep.
man of the Lord. That was the ultimate test of his integrity. Because it got brutal. If you keep reading, eventually they was hanging on gallows, bro. They was killing our people, man.
Yep.
You know, so that was spiritual that he didn't bow. You know, because like he understood through the spirit, like, look, man, eventually we gonna have to repeat this story again, and this is what's happening. We're living this whole story again, man.
Yeah. And I believe if you read in the first chapter, it speaks about a dream that he had with two dragons,
Mm-hmm.
basically one taking down the other. It was like a vision he got,
Vision, yep.
you know. So his spirit was already like kind of like perked up, you know, that there's about to be an insurrection against his people, you know.
Yep. Con. Moving on here, and it says, hold on. Yep, it says echoes against the ancient feud between Jacob and Esau and the Edomites' unrelenting hostility to Israel represents not just a historical rivalry, but a spiritual battle between the covenant people of Yahweh and the forces that oppose him, like we were just breaking down. It says Haman's position in a Persian society and his association with Macedonia, which is additions to Esther 16 and 10, if somebody want to pull that too. It says hint at a broader historical continuity. So there's more after that, right? But it says his role as the king of Macedonians suggested that Edomites assimilated into early Macedonian power structures, laying the foundations for the rise of the Timonid dynasty, a dynasty whose influence will culminate in the conquest of Alexander the Great. And that was where Alexander the Great got the clever idea to Hellenize everybody and to bring everybody under the Greek rule, so to speak. He wanted to incorporate like a universal type of belief system under the Israelites, and he did it subtly because in many cases he had favors with the priests because he didn't come to them as being a necessary enemy, but they understood through the spirit that he was a demon and that he, what was his quest, like 12 years, I think. Well, I mean, what was like, I think it was like 12 years that he reigned, 12 years, and then he died.
Oh, Alexander, yeah,
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 yeah, yeah. So basically,
12
he
years.
never really got to see the fruits of his kingdom because he was a constant fucking war.
Mm-hmm.
You know, even like today, Esau can't even enjoy his own kingdom because he's at war. Like he's been in war since America's inception. Even before this motherfucker was called America, he was at war. He was at war with his own people. He was at war with the fucking French, with the Spanish. You know, he was at war with his own people, with the British, and now he's in war with the whole world right now. So we're just like, when do you stop having wars, and when do you decide to enjoy your kingdom and have some type of semblance of peace, bro? That's why the scriptures say continually they are gathered together for war.
That's right.
But it reads here, it says the Timonid dynasty, the Edomite assimilation and dominion, but the Timonid dynasty of Macedonia, claiming descendants from Hercules, demonstrated the Edomite strategy of survival through assimilation and dominance. That's why Edomite hold Hercules at a high regard. That's like their fucking god, like one of their top gods that they believe in, Hercules, strength. But it says, it says demonstrates the Edomite strategy of survival through assimilation and dominance. It says the etymology of Teman, a key region in Edom, which is Genesis 36 and 11, resonates with the dynasty's name, suggesting a symbolic connection. It says Hercules, referred to as a quintessential warrior god, embodies the Edomite ethnos, which ethos, I believe, goes into, if I'm not mistaken, that means like the nation, if I'm not mistaken. It says of conquest and strength. But the Timonid kings, including Philip II and his son Alexander, perpetuated this legacy, merging local traditions with their own. And this is what we was going into, how Esau incorporated all these different belief systems into his belief system. So therefore, when people are worshiping certain gods, it come off as them worshiping their god, but it's under an Edomite vibration, so to speak. Kind
Yeah.
of like when,
Yeah. Oh, slap.
yeah, kind of like
Uh,
when Esau turned Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shai to so-called white people. But Jake still believing they're worshiping the true God of heaven because the concept is there, but it's a different deity, man.
Mm-hmm.
I, I had a precept to go with you. I can also had one point to go into that assimilation. This is from Britannica, just a definition because that's what it mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
So the simulation in anthropology and sociology, the process whereby individuals or groups of differing ethnic heritage are absorbed into the dominant culture of a society. The process of assimilating involves taking on the traits of the dominant culture to such a degree that the assimilating group becomes socially indistinguishable from other members of the society. So it's
Yep.
emerging, and this is what this man does. He doesn't get his own clout. He doesn't get his own power. He absorbs other people's power and make it his. We said this at the beginning, but I had a precept to go with that real quick. I don't want to, take, take over. But this is Sirach 12 and 10. It said, never trust thy enemy, for like an iron wrestles, so is his wickedness. Though he humble himself and go crouching, yet take good heed and beware of him. And thou shalt be unto him as if thou had wiped a looking glass, and thou shalt know that his rust had not altogether wiped away. This the point though. Verse 13 or verse 12. Sirach 12 and 12. Set him not by thee, lest when he hath overthrown thee, he stand up in thy place.
Yeah.
It says, neither let him sit at thy right hand, lest he seek to take thy seat.
Mm-hmm.
And now at the last remember my words, and he be pricked therewith.
Yep.
Yeah. And I strongly believe this is how the Persians went down, because the Persians, they were taken over by the Greeks, but it wasn't just the Greeks; it was the Macedonians specifically.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I speculate that they had already supplanted them, because look, this nigga Amen was already in the high courts as a prince under the Persian Empire, and then all of a sudden the Macedonians take them over in its entirety, and they marched through basically all the way through Mesopotamia, man.
Yeah.
Because you let that guy sit in your court, and then you get supplanted, just like the scriptures say,
Yeah. Well, it tells you here, it says the Persian period, it says the Israelites fared well under the Persian rule. It goes back to the point when, it was like Jacob was willing to bow to, what was his name? What was his name again? Was it Xerxes?
Yeah, that's what we call it there. And there
Yeah.
it says Hershey's or
I
something.
heard you, yeah. But it said, because when you go in the blue letter, it says, matter of fact, I can pull that history up real quick. I was just reading it. It says Ahasuerus or Ahasuerus in, man, what the fuck, bro? This damn thing. Give me a second, Salakia. All right. Yep. So when it says here, Ahasuerus equals I will be silent and poor, but it says the title of the king of Persia, probably Xerxes. All right. So it was basically the name of how do you pronounce it? Ahasuerus was basically a title. It was a title.
Kind.
But it says here the Jews fell well under the Persian rule, but Cyrus, and this is going into Cyrus, this is kind of like after the fact, but it says Cyrus had given permission to return to Jerusalem and rebuild that temple. Although they met opposition from the inhabitants of Palestine, it was dedicated during the reign of Darius the Great. But Ezra the scribe and Nehemiah and Laman sought to strengthen the Palestinian Israelite community and encourage their loyalty to the law of the Most High. But it says for about a century and a half after Nehemiah's time, the Persian Empire exercised control over Judea, and the Jews were permitted to observe their religious ordinance without interference. Okay, so going down here, it says Persia's failure to conquer Greece encouraged subject peoples to seek their independence. But it says, but Egypt was constantly attempting to throw off the Persian yoke, and Judea, and geographically between the two powers, could not escape involvement. But during the reign of Xerxes III, which is Ochus, many Jews were implicated in the revolt against Persia. But then if you go back into the king of the north and the king of the south, which you got the Seleucids, and then you have the Ptolemies, which I believe was king of Egypt at that time, or over Egypt, the province of Egypt. Those was part of Alexander's conglomerate, so to speak, because you had Seleucus, you had Lacedaemonius, you had Cassander, and you had Ptolemy. You know what I'm saying? And one was interchangeable. So even then, you had an influx of these Edomite powers regioning over those areas at the time. So he could have, because he was up in high office, man.
Yeah, and that's the danger. Like you read the precept of letting a wicked demon sit next to you, man.
Yeah.
He relaying information. He getting the lays of the land.
Yeah.
He know where all of
Plotting.
this is at, where the spoils
Nigga
are at.
scheming.
You know,
God.
and Alexander the Great, when he got that sword, man, he ran through that whole region, man. I mean,
he had the intel on it already.
Yep, and I think the scriptures speak on that. How he fled. He flew like the wings.
Mm-hmm.
The he go into that prophecy. He ran through that land, man. 30,000 men. When you look it up, they just basically. How do you take 30,000 men? You don't even know the land or the terrain, and you're winning battle after battle after battle. They almost made it into India, man. That's how far he went in there.
That's far he conquered East, yep.
You
Hey,
know,
Todd, can you do me a favor, bro? Can you read that definition again that you read before you brought up the precept? I'm gonna make a point on
Yeah,
that.
going back, this is Britannica.com for assimilation. It says in anthropology and sociology, the process whereby individuals or groups of different ethnic heritage are absorbed into the dominant culture of a society.
Mhm.
The process of assimilating involves taking on the traits of the dominant culture to such a degree that the assimilating group becomes socially indistinguishable from other members of the society.
That's where you get your Gentiles from.
yep,
Hmm.
That's where
yep,
the Gentiles come from. See, it's one big picture for me, man.
yeah,
'Cause, hey, what does the average Jake call himself? I'm an African, what, American, right?
America, yep,
American.
There
yep.
you go. There go your Gentile. For all you stupid ass Christians out there.
Hmm.
I had a precept to back up that definition. If I
You
could.
got, yeah, you got it, bro.
This is additions to Esther chapter 7, verse 10. It says, for Ammon, a Macedonian, the son of Amadatha, being indeed a stranger from the Persian blood and far distant from our goodness, and as a stranger received of us, has so far obtained a favor that we show toward every nation, as that he was called our father and was continually honored of all the next person unto the king. So that's assimilation right there. He's not of Persian blood, but he obtained so much favor, he basically became right under the king. You
Hmm.
know, he became ingrained into those courts, and that's why he had so much power over us. Because Mordecai, he was high up too. You know, but you had that demon Amen in there. You know, basically never letting go of a grudge, man. You know.
God,
Hmm.
God. Well, when you go into Daniel, the eighth chapter, when it goes into the notable horn, representing the first king, Alexander, which is the king of Greece, when it says the swiftness of Alexander's conquest as wings on a leopard in the previous chapter, it goes into basically he went through them because it says representing the first king, the fact that the goat's feet did not touch the ground symbolizes the swiftness of how he conquered, man.
Yeah,
That's why
yeah,
we go into how he put those 30,000 men without not having a particular, well, obviously he had knowledge in aspects of the terrain because through documents and records and so forth like that. You know, the scriptures
mhm,
don't go all in detail, but common sense will tell you when you're doing reconnaissance, you've been scoping an area for some time, man. This is why
mhm,
Esau knows in some degree on how to invade certain countries in the east because he had reconnaissance set up, man, to study the land. So,
yeah. That's what the 13 colonies was about here. You know,
yeah,
he didn't just show up with the sword right off the bat. He tried to set up colonies, talk to a few Gadites, you know. And he had the so-called pioneers, you know, you had the nigga, what's his name, Paul Revere.
all Revere,
This nigga
Yeah,
getting on a horse with a raccoon hat on, going across, shaking hands. But he wasn't there to
that's the
make
third.
friends. He was spying you out, man.
yeah, Lewis and Clark. Yeah, them niggas
Yeah.
Lewis and Clark. Yeah,
Lois and Clark, man. This nigga literally has not changed. When I say this nigga been running the same play for
same
3,000
play.
years.
Yeah,
Yeah.
nigga don't stop.
Yeah, and the apostles broke it down. They said it's not that Esau was smart or wise. I mean, he's wise in wickedness. I mean, he's not necessarily like incompetent or dumb because he could figure shit out, you know. But the fact about it is, he's not very clever. If that make any sense, he's cunning, but he's not clever. It's the same playbook. It's a formula they use. Like, you know, three what's three square? You know what I'm saying? You go into three squared nine, whatever you want to call it, right? It's a formula that you use to solve a problem. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
Like if I use 2 times 2 equals 4, that particular formula will give me 4 every time. Now I can go
Yeah,
about it and saying 2 plus 2, 2, 2. I can do 4 ones, but it's still part of the same formula. So that's how Esau rules, man. It's the
yeah,
same fucking playbook.
yep.
Yeah.
And you know what? He's relying on us not knowing that Sirach 12 and 10.
And you know
That's
what?
really what he's relying on. You know, us
Hmm.
not looking at him as an enemy, you know.
Well, we got
Hmm.
the receipts, brother. We got the receipts right here. The Bible,
Yeah.
Yeah,
the
But
Bible cracked that ass, boy.
yeah.
vocab. You can't deny this history because he like to say, "Oh, the Edomites are done away with." Never.
Right.
They not
No,
done
hell
away
no.
with till we put them out. You know.
Yeah,
Right.
matter of fact, we're reading about your ass right now, nigga.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This
Con.
is you we
Con.
reading about.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the final point on that precept I read, when it says Ammon a Macedonian, remember before it called him an Agagite. But see here it calls him a Macedonian. You see, that's the link right there. The Agagites and the Macedonians are of the same lineage of people. Okay, they just moved to a different region. You know, and
Change their name.
when you look up the Macedonians and what they did, they were not like the other Greeks. See, Greece was not a empire before the Macedonians. They were spread out city states. That's where you get metropolises from. You had
Metropolis from
Sparta, you had Thebes, you had Athens.
Athens.
They had their own governments and their own shit. When Philip the First, which is the father of Alexander, came into power, he created something called leagues, and he convinced them to all get together to fight the Persians. That's when they became, you know, a one unified empire. But before that, you know, they were all doing their own thing, man. You know, they had what you call melting pots. You know, they would
And
trade with Egyptians at different cities, and every nation was represented in them city states, and they governed themselves. But then Philip came along and was like, no, and then he unified the whole Greek peninsula, you know, to go fight the Persians. But
Well,
the
yeah,
Macedonians were the one that led that. What led that though, you know?
yeah, and that's how you got the states today. Because when you look in America, there's city states as well. City states. It's the same concept. It's the same Greco-Roman strategy.
Yep.
Because even every state has its own constitution, believe it or not, and each state can act independently outside of the federal government, or they can act as its own entity if need be. Because it says so something probably silly. Matter of fact, it says. Matter of fact, damn. Because actually Alexander, it was Philip II, Philip of Macedon, which was no, I'm sorry, Salakia. Philip II or Alexander, the government of Macedon was a collective of city states with a variety of government styles. Sounds familiar, don't it?
Mm-hmm.
Sparta had its two kings. Athens is famous for democracy, and Thebes had a sort of an oligarchy. Now, when you go into the history of oligarchs, that goes your higher up, your elites, man. Your what they call your they call them in the Roman Empire. They call them monarchs, so to speak. And it says oligarchy, for example, but this meant that Macedon had an important hierarchy of nobility and peasantry. And it makes sense that if that was Amalek, because Amalek still has that ruling class mentality. It says a nobility, a hierarchy. But the Greek states, on the other hand, had a very heavy focus on citizenships that goes with democracy. But there was certainly still hierarchies, but there was a large emphasis on the middle class. Military, it says that militaries were structured differently. The Macedonians had a heavy companion of cavalry, which was called nobles, of course, and the Phlegontes, which was the peasants. It says the Greeks had their citizens' armies of mostly hoplites, but note that both armies had a variety of support / troops as well, but they were often mercenaries or allies. So, there you go.
Yep. And part of the reason the Romans were so strong is because they studied the Greeks,
Yeah,
you know,
they
and how they
merged.
fought.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Well, I mean, because like with the Romans, they basically took over Greek culture and they just merged a bunch of other different cultures into that, and they just called themselves the Romans. Which Rome was originally Japhetic peoples, man. It wasn't even Edomites.
Yep.
Going back into that Psalms 49 and 11, they named the they
lands after their own
after
name.
their own names. Yep. God. But going back on, what's up?
I was gonna say I had a precept, but you go ahead, Doc.
Okay, I was just gonna bring a little bit more out of the article, and then we can get some more precepts. Yep. So it says here. It says Hercules revealed. I read that, including Philip II and his son Alexander, which Philip II is Philip of Macedon, perpetuated this legacy, merging local traditions with their own. But the rise marked the power or the consolidation of Macedonian power, seeking a stage for Hellenistic era. That go your concept of your one world order right there, because they wanted to bring everybody under this particular culture. It says setting the stage for Hellenistic era, a period of unprecedented cultural and military dominance that will profoundly impact Israel. It says Alexander the Great, a man of Teman. Alexander the Great, a descendant of the Temanid line, epitomizes the Edomite traits of ambition and conquest. It says his military campaigns reshaped the known world, fulfilling the prophecy of Job 9:24. The earth is given into the hands of the wicked, because remember, that was really Esau's first actual rulership on the world stage, that third beast, man. Because before, when he was in the time of the Persians, he didn't really rule. He just had like some type of influential power, but it wasn't necessarily his kingdom. Even going back into the Babylonians, Esau had a particular hand in taking us down, but he wasn't like the world dominant. This is why they say civilization started with the Greeks, because that marked the beginning of Esau's formal rule on the planet Earth.
that's that's a map of you know, all that they had conquered.
Yep.
Yes, almost 3 continents.
And you
Slightly
notice
a little small.
they never call an empire a full empire until they conquer our land. You know, the Assyrians, they were ruling in their own area for a while before 700 BC, but it wasn't until they got all the way down to us in Egypt where they considered the Assyrian Empire to be at peak. Same thing with the Persians. They were ruling over there in close to India in the Afghanistan region, but they didn't consider themselves an empire until they conquered our region. Same with the Greeks. Esau has been in Rome over 700 BC, but he was still fighting the Etruscans. You know, he didn't consider himself an empire until they expanded and they conquered, you know, our land, you know, the Levant region.
Yep. Because, matter of fact, that's the spirit. Because when you go down here, I was reading when it goes into the culture or the leadership. Hold on, let me find it real quick. Shit, I lost my place. Because that's that land of milk and honey. That's that, because like the when you think of chess, bro, you think of like checkmating the king and getting that queen off the board. That's ultimately Israel. That's us, man. If you conquer us, you conquered the board. But see, he didn't bank on Yahweh Shem Shai waking us up in this time and finding all this out. Because even though this is history you can pull up, but he wasn't expecting us to link the gap. But this is the Most High says, how are the things that Esau searched out? How is his hidden things sought up? You know what I mean? It's right here. Pull it up.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
That's right.
But going back to the article, it reads, Alexander's conquests were not merely territorial, but they were spiritual. It says he sought to unify his empire through the amalgamation of religious traditions, declaring himself the son of Zeus, Ammon, and embracing local deities like Melkart, which is that's the Phoenician version of Hercules. So that's these gods coming back under different particular names, so to speak. Like you got Ishtar or Astarte, or you got Lady Liberty, hence, you know, the fertility goddess. These are all the same deities that have been in the ancient world, but they rename them under different names. And it says this syncretic approach mirrors the Edomite tendency to absorb and dominate. But moreover, Alexander's cultural policies paved the way for Hellenization of Israel, or the Gentiles. Greek philosophy, language, and customs infiltrated Jewish or Israelite society, turning many Israelites away from Yahweh and towards pagan traditions. And that go to the Gentiles right there. This is why niggas are in fraternities, sororities. You got Jake that's working in high office of government. You know, you got Jake that's playing sports. These are all like Greek customs. These are all like pagan traditions. It says the spiritual subjugation initiated by Alexander will continue under the Roman Empire and its spiritual successor, Roman Catholicism, which is hence where the churches spring from today. So going back to the history, I'm going to read some on Alexander the Great real quick. If you brothers got precept, bring them out.
I got one.
Yeah, you got one, brother.
This is First Maccabees 3:48. It says, and laid open the book of the law, wherein the heathen has sought to paint the likeness of their images. You know, just going into the other precept you quoted, this ties right in hand with that. You know, throughout history, they've always done iconoclasm, you know, trying to basically force themselves into that birthright. You know, so when it comes to this devil's personality, you know, he always starts off and I'll read in Psalms 55:21. The words of his mouth were smoother than butter, but war was in his heart. His words were softer than oil, yet were they drawn swords. You know, so this is how this guy gets into these positions of power. He's a master manipulator when it comes to, you know, convincing these nations that he's your friend. You know, just like when he came over here to the Americas. Initially, he came in peace. He was cool with them, you know, got them to start giving them gifts. And then, but what his true intentions are the whole time was to take over and slaughter. So
Yeah.
he goes in other nations. He sneaks in there like a snake, like he's cool with everybody. Next thing you know, he's setting up a coup to take
Right.
over the
Right.
nation and
Yeah.
getting a lot of other people to take over. And that's what he did with our people over here in the Americas. He basically, what he did was set up a massive coup. He got with a bunch of Gadites that already kind of had a little bit of beef with one another, maybe from trade or whatever, and then got them all to fight and kill each other. And next thing he's bringing in smallpox and the Gatling gun.
Right.
Well,
You
yeah,
Right.
know,
he made proxies out of Gad too. Use proxies to go in and get shit that he can't get. Because technically, when they invade a land, they need approval of Congress. They ain't got an approval of Congress in fucking 30 some plus years to go in particular foreign land. So they set up proxies to do it, and they start like little regional wars, and they start proxy wars, and then they come in on the back end and get what they gonna get. Like this whole thing with fucking Pakistan and India, they found out that the CIA had something to do with that attack, man. It was all the CIA.
Yeah. See, I knew it, bro. It
yeah,
had to be. I ain't look into it yet, but you knew there's some wickedness going on,
Yeah,
man. Fucking demons.
yeah, I did a video on it because I'm like, ain't no way in hell these, because both of them got nuclear superpowers, bro. Both of them got nukes, bro. I'm
Yeah.
like,
They
ain't no
right
way.
next
right,
to each other
right,
too.
Yeah, bro. It's like literally across the board. I'm like, wait a minute. I'm like, this shit don't make sense. Like, why is Pakistan and India at war? Then it's for like, who you think? Esau. Esau set up proxies and he went in there with the CIA and probably paid some pie off in the government. And then the attack happened and now they're blaming it on each other. That's what Esau do, man.
Yeah,
mhm,
bro. He had Gadites going to war with each other over some fire water, man. You
Yeah.
know, he'll give them some
yeah,
alcohol or some guns, and they'll go in and kill other Gadites, bro. Like there was some demonic shit going on, man.
Yeah.
You know.
right. This guy's a master at that shit, man. He'll
Right.
go up to somebody and say, hey, so and so said you was a bitch, and then he'll go to the other person. So and so said you a bitch too, and then give him the
Yeah.
fight. See,
Yeah,
see,
yeah.
here's the guns.
I
At the
would.
same time when he told him that rumor, he was supplying them with weapons, and
Yep.
drugs and shit. This is what
I wouldn't
this
take
is why
that
they
if I
call him the
was you.
devil, man. He's a fucking
Hmm.
serpent.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah.
So this devil was mad because he got supplanted out of the birthright, but really it was already ordained for Jake to get it any damn way. But ever since then, he's tried to do his own version to come up with how to supplant somebody else, but he does it in a demonic way.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you know he wanted us too, bro, because realistically, it would make more sense to colonize them Hamites all the way in Africa first before you cross the Atlantic Ocean, to get us, and then you went to West Africa to get us specifically out of there, man. So it would have been way cheaper for him to just conquer the lands of Africa down there in Kenya, Uganda, because that would have just been, he could have just crossed it on land,
Yeah.
but
He
he
was
wanted
scared to
us.
go. Yeah, but he was scared to go. He was scared to go in Africa, bro. He wouldn't touch it. That's why he set up he even had Jake selling out against Jake's, bro. He paid Arabs and other Jakes and Hamites to go in and grab us up. Because he wasn't finna go into the interiors of Africa, bro. He was afraid of it.
Yeah, he could fuck.
Yeah, and
Yeah, he would have been a
and the
sponge.
dark nations they was pretty much already on Esau. They was like, nah, we already know what it is. That
Hmm.
fucking apartheid, in South Africa. Like, how the fuck does Elon Musk like? I don't know, bro. But anyway, it says the contour or continuation from Edomite systems, the Roman Empire often regarded as the pinnacle of ancient civilization, owed much of its culture to Hellenistic Greece. Can somebody look
Hmm.
up the word Hellenistic for me? We know what it means, but for edification purposes, somebody look that word up. It says from the art and architecture to governance and religion, Rome absorbed and adapted Greek traditions, hence the Greco-Roman Empire. Now, for any stupid idiot out there that say that the Edomites are done away with, they don't understand history. Because if you look at the ancient architecture, like if you look at the Temple of Mars and you compare it to modern day Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C., it's the same guy. That was like the ancient equivalent for Capitol Hill in Rome, bro. It's the same goddamn architecture. And bro, it's like tracing the breadcrumbs. Esau leaves his symbols everywhere he go. He leaves a trail. It's
Yeah.
just like playing hide and seek with fucking LA gears on that light up. Like, I see your dumb ass under the car, nigga. You hiding, but I can still see you.
Hey, look up them pictures of Petra too, man.
And it's
Looks just
red.
like the Greeks, man,
Yeah.
and the Romans. But the definition of Hellenistic, it says relating to Greek history, language, and the culture from the death of Alexander the Great to the defeat of Cleopatra and Mark Antony by Octavian in 31 BC.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, that was the Macedonian rule, okay? Because remember, you had Greeks before that, you had the Minoans and all of that. But
Mm-hmm.
Hellenistic is really
And those were
centered
Japhetic
around this
people.
time when Philip and Alexander came about.
Yep. And those Minoans, I think they were Japhetic people, weren't they? That was
Yeah,
Japhet,
yeah,
weren't
they were
they?
prophetic,
Yeah.
you know?
But
Yep,
yep.
see?
There's a good visual representation too. Is that Assassin's Creed game they came out with, where basically you were a Spartan, and it allows you to go in through all those lands and all these different time periods, and get a good visual of exactly how it is. And you can just see Jake walking around in there, and see all the architecture and shit like that. They got articles and stuff through the game that you explore. It's pretty edifying, just to put a visual on it, exactly what was going on.
Yeah. Also, here, bro, to back up what you were saying, it says, although mighty in battle, it was Hellenistic culture rather than Macedonian rule that was Alexander's legacy to the east. It says, because I mean, even at that time, they called it the Middle East, but there was no such thing as the East. You got Asia, we call it Euro Asia, you got Western Asia, Far East, Southern Asia, Northern Asia. It's all the
Mm-hmm.
same fucking continent, man. But it says he determined to found a new city in each country of his empire, which would serve as a model for the people or for the reordering of life of contrary as a whole along Greek lines. But materially speaking, this meant the erection of fine public buildings, which you see downtown today, shit like that, a gymnasium for games. That's an apocrypha when it said that they made a place of exercise.
Yep.
And also with them fucking hats at where your boy Sakari, the whole concept, I think it was Jason, if I'm not mistaken, that adopted that Greek culture and he was making the Israelites wear hats and shit.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm on point with that history. I got to go back and go over it.
Yeah, I believe it was. Jay.
Yeah, but that's all the Greek custom. I remember when I first came into truth, Elder Uriah was breaking it down because we was wearing hats and shit. He said, brother, that jersey you got, he said that's a Greek custom, a Greek custom. In the back of my mind, I'm like, what are you talking about? And then he was breaking it down. I'm like, oh, it makes sense. And he was showing me, like, he broke down a whole Nike, the whole 23. They was breaking it down, bro. And I was like, damn,
Yeah.
makes
And
sense.
that's the spirit, that first part you read where it says it was the culture that was his biggest part of his legacy, more so than his war.
Yep.
Because when you think about it today, 40% of the English vocabulary is Greek.
It's Greek.
It goes back to Greek. The other 40% is Latin, and then you
Yep.
got some Germanic stuff in there too. But you think about all of the terms that they use, it goes all back to Greece. The whole medical field goes back to Greece. When they take a Hippocratic oath, that goes back to a Greek name,
Asclepius.
Hippocrates.
Hypocrisy.
You know,
Oh, I got it wrong.
yeah, he's like called the father of medicine. When you hear all these names about cancer and carcinoma and hematoma, those are all Greek words, man, that persisted all the way to this day. That
Yep.
Esau still uses, man, and they have the saying, civilization started with the Greeks. Democracy, all of this shit came back from that guy that Hellenistic period, man.
Yep.
This here's a map of all the cities named Alexandria that
Wow.
Elder Mahaloya said.
Yep. Because Hippocrates, he was known as the father of medicine.
Yep.
It says it was he was in ancient Greek medicine. It says they developed a theory. It says of 4 humors that believe illness resulted from an imbalance of these bodily fluids, advocated for observation and rational thinking in diagnosis and treatment. So like you go into pharmacy or pharmakia, it's all Greek shit. Same thing, like you got the Greek god of Asclepius, which is the god of medicine. Or if you look on a Blue Cross Blue Shield symbol, it's basically the staff of Asclepius. Even when you're looking at some of those prescriptions and you can't read that shit, that's basically Greek, man. I'm like, how the hell do you pronounce atmitope for omeprazole, like type shit like that? I'm like, I can't pronounce that shit, man.
Yep. Even modern day colleges like Harvard University, that all went back to Athens, man.
Athens,
Having
yep.
these big studies in universities. Every major philosopher that everybody respects today, they came out of that period. Aristotle, Plato, Socrates, that those philosophies, they still are highly praised today, man. That's part of the image. That's what he wants you to bow down to.
And that's why they get this modern day trust the science, trust the science. That's all that, because even with Hippocrates, they ruled out any spiritual issues dealing with illnesses in the body. So let's just say if you had dementia or if you suffer from schizophrenia, except for you saying that you had a demon that was plaguing your mind, he will make a rational aspect behind it and say, no, that's dementia. That come from this and this and that. It was more of a rational type thing.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like you can't go. That's why they debunk herbology or natural medicines today in the traditional medicine. Well, not traditional medicine, or when you go into like the traditional field of medicine, this is why they debunk anything holistic wise, man. You say you use herbs, they say, oh, that's not scientifically proven, you know.
Yeah.
But they give you their medicine, which is not science at all, but it's just a bunch of chemicals, man, because they're going off rational. Like, what the fuck is rational, bro?
Yeah, you buy a herb, they say this is not approved by the FDA.
Yeah.
Even though it could
Yeah.
probably cure your ass whatever you got going on.
But half the
Yeah.
shit approved by the Federal and Drug Administration is not even good for you, bro.
Yeah, and they know it's not. That's why they make so much money off you.
Yep. Yep. And
I
that's
had
where
a
you get
scripture.
the Hippocratic oath from. That's where you get the Hippocratic oath, man. Doctors study this. They know that.
Yep.
But go ahead, brother Salakia.
No, you good. It's Psalms 37:35. I've seen the wicked in great power and spreading himself like a green bay tree.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yet he passed away, and lo, he was not. I saw him, but he could not be found.
Mm-hmm.
It says, mark the perfect man, and behold the upright, for the end of that man is peace. But the transgressors shall be destroyed together. The end of the wicked shall be cut off. It's just, the first, really the point was, 35, seen the wicked in great power spreading himself like a green bay tree. This man always has had, the idea of world domination. And now we're
Yeah.
here in
Yeah.
2025 through, NATO and the EU. We're seeing that. But, we're going to also see the stone that was carved out and smashed the toes that's spoken of in Daniel.
Yep. That's right.
God.
But it says that too in Maccabees. It says when Alexander died, many evils multiplied in the earth.
Yeah. Yeah. You know why? Because the kingdom was broken up into 4 generals.
Mm-hmm.
Each of them had a main strong point, man.
Yep.
So yeah, I'm gonna go through the rest of this article, and then we'll get the rest of the precepts, and we can shut it down. It's a little bit more, but not too bad. It says the Roman Empire, often regarded as the pinnacle of ancient civilization, owed much of its culture to Hellenistic Greece. From art to architecture to governance and religion, Rome absorbed and adapted Greek traditions, Greco-Romans. It says this process of Hellenization aligned with the Edomite pattern of assimilation, ensuring the survival and expansion of their influence. But the transition from the Roman Empire to the Byzantine Empire, which is, the Holy Roman Empire, so to speak, when Jake was over, further solidified the integration of Greek and Roman traditions. So Jake kept that tradition going because at this time they were already Gentiles, man. And this is after the crucifixion of Yahushua. So they kept that tradition. Yeah, this was after the Byzantine Empire. That was after the crucifixion of Yahushua. It says the Byzantine Church, a precursor to the Roman Catholicism, perpetuated this secretism initiated by Alexander. Pagan festivals were rebranded as Christian holidays. Christmas, which is Saturnalia, you got your 4th of July, you got which that wasn't really a thing then, but I think they did have some type of semblance of independence and they were celebrating rituals. But also you got your Halloweens or your people call it Samhain, but I think it's pronounced San Juan if I'm not mistaken, and your Day of the Dead. All these particular festivals were all in the ancient world as well. And veneration of saints replaced localized deities. But the book of Revelation describes Mystery Babylon as a global system of spiritual and physical oppression, hence the transatlantic slave trade. The system, characterized by luxury, corruption, and idolatry, reflects the legacy of Hellenistic and Roman practices. Makes sense as to why you still have Israelites that's in a Gentile state of mind.
Yeah.
For example, Christians, they've been coming up against us for the last how many years? Trying to debunk this whole Gentile and this and that, all they can be said. The Gentiles are Israelites, man.
Right.
And this is the history. This is how you trace it. This is what they're missing. Revelation 17 and 18 paints a vivid picture of a decadent empire that deceives nations and enslaves the people of Yahweh Shai. It says the prophetic imagery of Daniel also aligns with this narrative. In Daniel 8, the Grecian goat represents Alexander's conquest, setting the stage for the Roman Empire's dominance. But together, these prophecies highlight the continuity of Edomite systems from ancient Macedonia to modern times. But Deuteronomy 28 provides further insight into this oppression. It says discourses enlisted in its chapter, including the prophecy of Israel's enslavement in Egypt, which is Mizraim, find their ultimate fulfillment in the transatlantic slave trade. It says this system of bondage, perpetuated by Edomite nations, underscores the prophetic struggle between Jacob and Esau.
If I could add, that
Facts.
that transition between the Greeks and the Romans was really just like a big ass upgrade. Now
Yeah.
you just went, you just basically went from a large to an extra large,
Yeah.
because we all know the similarities. The gods have the same, pretty much the same backgrounds, just different names. It's just as far as the territory and all the people that they, we're gonna use the word again, assimilated. They simulated more people into this.
Yeah, because even after that, the eastern part of the Roman Empire, they still spoke Greek. Like a lot of the Byzantines, when they
Hmm.
ruled out of Constantine, they still were like Greek speaking people. You have what you call the Orthodox Christians, and then you had the Western Catholic Christians. But at one point, they were all part of the Roman Empire because, like you said, they just basically merged together. They they did that goat tan and trunks.
Yep.
you know,
Yep. God, go
so
Tinks.
yeah, goat tinks.
God.
And he became a super demon, man.
Yeah, God.
Like
God.
that was, and that's why that beast basically gets reincarnated to be the final boss, man. Nigga comes back,
Hmm.
you know,
But
like
peep this. The book here is called, y'all can see, it's called The Roman Empire, the Empire of the Edomite.
yeah,
Yeah, and even
Yep.
in this book, it goes into it. It even goes into I mean, it's good history here too. But it even goes into like some Latin phrases and shit. How they was, I can't really pronounce or read it, but basically they even show you Latin phrases here, like all this here. Y'all can really see it, Salakia. Let me put my phone up to it. Y'all probably can't see it because I know the screen is hella small. But this is basically Latin, man.
yeah, yep.
God,
Hey, and
That's
Latins,
God, I want
those were a group of people. Those were a group of Japhites that Esau
Japhites.
took down.
They spoke that. Yeah, they spoke that Japhetic people.
Yeah,
God.
That's why. Matter of fact, you got a precept up.
Yeah, I was gonna just make a quick point. Going into the influence of the Edomite and the system and things that we still do today, like we're talking about the hats and stuff like that. Even the concept of public formal education for citizens that also originated in ancient Greece or during this Edomite's rule. It says ancient Greece introduced the concept of formal education for citizens, emphasizing physical education, music, mathematics, and philosophy, with non-table philosophers like Socrates and Plato contributing to educational theories. And ever since then, all these other nations that also drunk of that wine, they do the same thing. They all have a public school system set up. But prior to that, certain education, like when it comes to like religious stuff like that, or political, was reserved for elites, and each individual family members, they taught their own kids at home, you know, on how
right.
to come up to be what you inherited your father's business, and you
Yeah,
learned that trade, and you might have learned something else, but you trained your kids up on how to do that. But Esau, he had a specific mindset that he wanted the citizens to think and how they operate. So even then, your public school system today is the product of Esau Edom.
yeah. That nigga always trying to centralize something, man. You know, he trying to central banking. He trying to do central learning. Because when
Right.
you back in, you would get homeschooled. Your mother would teach you when you were young. She would teach you the Hebrew. She would teach you, genealogies, basic things. Your mother would teach you those things, and then when you turned around, 12, then you would pick up a trade. You'd be an apprentice, or you would take your father's business, like the brother said. You know, that was your education. You know, your mother teaches you the basics and, you know, handles the menial stuff, you know, reading and writing, arithmetic, basic stuff. And then you specialize in a skill. That used to be the education, not shipping your ass off in a single file line,
Yeah.
you know, eating some GMO food out of a cardboard
Fucking orange
package.
tray. Yeah. That's called school to prison pipeline. But if y'all pay attention to this here, it's Jackson County Courthouse. See these symbols?
God.
That's that Latin shit, bro. That's how they
Okay.
go to. Yeah, that's on back of the courthouse, man, on front of the
Yeah.
courthouse. So
Yeah.
this is
Even them red you ever see them Roman centurions, they had them that red like feather
feather, yup.
mohawk looking joint.
Mm-hmm.
They stole that from Etruscans too.
Damn, bro, this dude, man, damn, bro, there's so much Jake don't know in this shit, bro. Jake knew where the fuck they was at, man. God
Bro.
damn, that's why he gonna try to come after the men of the Lord, bro. Because I mean, all this shit we living around, it has a meaning to it, bro. It ain't just there for decoration. This
Yeah.
man boasting that he took us down.
Yep. Just like you had to put the statue of the nigger woman they put up. Saw that in New York.
Yeah.
12
And
foot
she had
tall statue
weeds
of an obese Keisha, man.
with
And that's
weeds.
mockery, man. That's open mockery, man. They mocking you right to your face, man. Single, fat, bad attitude. She had her hands on the hip. You know,
And the
that's
black
that's how
woman
they
think
look
that's
at
a
you when you
badge of
go
honor.
overseas, man. You know, that's why Keisha can't never be a passport sis. She can't go to Italy or Germany and get no love because that's how they market you, man. You know, they don't, they don't care though. It's lucky.
Nah, con.
I had a
Um,
precept that was like that one either.
yeah, go ahead and bring it out. That's pretty much. I mean, it was a little bit more in the article for real. It goes into unmasking Babylon the Great, but I mean, it really just goes into how this man is gonna fall. So bring out your precept, and I'll read this last paragraph, and now we can shut it down after that.
Con. Two quick ones. This is Joel 3 and 4. It says, yeah, and what have ye to do with me, O Tyre and Zidon, and all the coast of Palestine? Will ye render me a recompense? And if ye recompense me, swiftly and speedily will I return your recompense upon your own head, because ye have taken my silver and my gold, and carried into your temples my goodly pleasant things. The children also of Judah and the children of Jerusalem have ye sold unto the Grecians, that they might remove them far from their border. So this goes back to when we were sold to somebody called the Grecians, man. And when we got removed far from our border, that's over here in America because these Americans are basically Greeks, you know. When you go to Amos 1 and 9, it says, thus saith the Lord Yahweh, for 3 transgressions of Tyrus, the same people, and for 4, I will not turn away the punishment thereof, because they delivered up the whole captivity to Edom. So it's basically telling you the same thing, but in one precept is calling them the Grecians, the other one is calling them the Edomites, you know. So that links Esau, Edom to the Greeks, you know. So vocab be trying to come out and say that the Edomites have been done away with. No. Okay. It
Yep.
says, and remember not the brotherly covenant.
Yep.
So this devil can change his name all he wants, man, and muddy up history all he wants, and do iconoclasm all he wants. But the truth is gonna come out, man. You know.
Yep. And we prove that because the Romans they took down the Etruscans, and the Etruscans had a heavy presence in Italy too. That's how Esau got Italy from and merged a part of the Roman Empire because he took down the Etruscans, man. That's
Yeah.
documented history.
Yeah, and really the Italian peninsula, that's basically just like Jamestown in America, because Esau settled what you call the 7 hills of Rome. He started in Rome and then he basically worked his way out, just like he started in Jamestown here and worked his way out, taking down the Native Americans.
Yep.
You know, he started in Rome and he started taking down the Latins, the Etruscans, the other people, all the way up to the Gauls up there in modern day Swiss.
Yep. Yeah, but it was like a gradual takeover though. It wasn't all at once. He did it, and then he used the strategy of divide and conquer as well. He did divide and conquer.
Yep. It took him years to do that. Yep.
Yeah, motherfucker. But reading on here, and it reads, And it says, the conclusion, unmasking mystery Babylon, the lineage of Haman and Agagite, traced through Alexander the Great and the Hellenistic Empire, reveals the enduring influence of Edomite systems. It says, these systems culminating in mystery Babylon represents the ultimate expression of spiritual and physical oppression. Yet Revelation assures us one of their eventual downfall. It says, the rise of the Edomite system fulfills prophecy that the earth is given into the hand of the wicked, but their reign is not internal. It says Yahweh will restore Israel in bringing justice and redemption to his covenant people. But understanding these connections is crucial for recognizing the ongoing struggle between Jacob and Esau. But by unmasking Babylon, a mystery Babylon, we prepare ourselves for the ultimate victory of the Most High's kingdom. But the story of Haman and Alexander is not just history, it is prophecy in motion, a testament to the enduring power of Yahweh Bashim Hawashai's promises. But this is a heritage we must preserve, the truth we must proclaim, and the hope we must hold on to, man. So will somebody get a closing precept on that? Jacob is the end of the world and Esau is the beginning.
That's the spirit.
End. Yeah.
I had it pulled up.
Yo, pull that, and I think we can end it on that.
This is 2nd Ezra chapter 6, verse 9. It says, for Esau is the end of the world, and Jacob is the beginning of it that followeth.
Yes, sir. I mean, that just plain as day, man. So, yeah, we in the downfall of this devil. He's going down fast. Hey, Yahushua said, behold, I seen Satan fall from heaven as lightning. This man going down, bro. These days, but it's going to be Friday, man. Yeah. Remember, the Lord said that for the elect's sake, those days will cut short, man. So, hey, we getting ready to fuck up out of here. This shit gonna pop, bro. Bro, like, you know, Lord's willow, I'm right about it, but this economy may not make it through the end of the year, man. If they go in the rate they going, this shit could be over with, man.
No.
I can grab a quick precept.
Yeah, you got it, bro.
Numbers 24 and 20, just because, you know, this whole lesson we've been going into how Amalek has climbed his grimy ass up to the top, you know, and ultimately his end is that he's gonna be exterminated. You know, Numbers 24 and 20, it says, and when he looked on Amalek, he took up his parable and said, Amalek was the first of the nations, but his latter end shall be that he perish forever. You know, so the Most High pretty much rose this devil up. You know, he rose the base man up, you know, to show his power in him, man. You know, right. And ultimately, hey, we know 1,000 years into the kingdom, man, these Edomites, man, they're going to be exterminated. Yep. We're going to look out of our kingdom and palace and see them no more, man.
That's right.
You know? But shit, Ricard, close us out, bro.
Yeah, you know, hey, that's pretty much the point. So with that, we're going to give all praises, glory, honor, and power to Yahweh. Double honors to the elders and the apostles at Great Millstone. Shalom and salutation to you brothers out there. And shalom to the rest of the elect. Shalom.
Shalom.